You mentioned obviously educating Canadians about what terrorism really looks like, or what a person who's going to commit a terrorist action looks like. Reading through your book, The Threat from Within, obviously painted the idea, at least maybe I had some misconception that most people had, is that a terrorist is essentially like almost a normal day Canadian. These
Yep.
people can be born from, people that are making six figures, people that are like born in Canada, they're already inside Canadian culture and they have no issues
Yeah.
transitioning. Like these are average Canadians, which is a complete different like misconception I had, or maybe I don't even know what kind of thoughts I had of what makes a terrorist. But it was very interesting to see, what makes a terrorist is just basically a normal person. Most of the time, it's just a regular person. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I think if you were to poll the average Canadian, they'd say, well, terrorists come to our country as immigrants, or or they're poor people, or they're not well educated, or I keep hearing this term marginalized, wherever that's supposed to mean, or they're mentally ill. A big myth about mental illness and terrorism. In actual fact, very few terrorists are mentally ill. No, you make the really good point, Matt. Terrorists are as normal as you and me. They just happen to be people who have a grievance, and who have been led to believe that the only way to address that grievance is through violence. So look at any terrorist movement in history. Look at the IRA in Ireland. They've decided that negotiations were going nowhere. The only way to get Britain to give up the 6 counties of Northern Ireland back to the Irish Republic was to bomb. Al Qaeda believed the only way to get, rights for Muslims in the Middle East was to bomb the United States. Uh, right wing terrorists think the only way to ensure white supremacy is to bomb people or to kill people. It's the same motivation time and time and time again. Some of these movements are very religious in nature. So my fifth book, which is When Religion Kills, talks about the fact that every religion has terrorist movements within it. I mean, we talk a lot, everyone, Islam is terrorism, and all these Muslim groups. There are Christian terrorist groups. There are Buddhist terrorist groups. Now, that should be an oxymoron, a Buddhist terrorist, right? But there are Buddhist terrorists in Sri Lanka. There are Buddhist terrorists in Myanmar. There are Buddhist terrorists in Thailand. There's a monk in Myanmar, which is also called Burma, um, who has been one of the main figures in. Your listeners may not be familiar with the crisis in northwestern Myanmar, with the people called the Rohingya, which are Muslim people who've been forced to basically flee for their lives because the Burmese army has been slaughtering them, and they're being led ideologically in many ways by a monk, and his nickname is the Buddhist Bin Laden. That's not a good nickname, right? There are Jewish terrorist groups. There are Hindu terrorist groups in India right now. So it can be tied to any religious. It's also ideological. You don't have to be a religious figure. So the far right people don't tend to be religious. They're ideologically motivated. They're politically motivated. So anyone from all walks of life can become a terrorist. And then you get into this really unhelpful dialogue. Well, one man's terrorist and another man's freedom fighter. Where do you draw the distinction between those two? Who decides? Are terrorists the freedom fighters we are terrorists the freedom fighters we don't like? Maybe. The African National Congress was a terrorist group in the 1960s, then became the government in 1994. So they changed from a terrorist group to the good guys overnight. These are really, really complicated issues. And I think that people really gloss over how difficult this thing is.